I declare that Christopher Paul Webb is duly elected as the Member of Parliament for the Blackpool South constituency.
Now, it's going to be a very long night. A long story short, we could be here until the very, very early hours of the morning. It could be 5, maybe even some people saying it might be 6 a.m. before we get a result here. I think that's probably pessimistic. But that's very, very key. It's really, really important because it sets a narrative. That means that the result here in Blackpool South will come just as the breakfast shows begin to go on air the next morning. And that matters in politics. You'll remember back in 2022 when Boris Johnson faced one of his most bruising sets of local elections. It was post-Partygate. In fact, it was actually one of the many catalysts for his complete downfall. He had a relatively decent night. It was a relatively mixed result, to be honest with you. It wasn't a complete car crash, although there were lots of losses. The Tories did hold on to some votes in the north of England in particular. But just before 5 o'clock in the morning, Westminster and Wandsworth, 2 really important, usually safe Tory seats, went to Labour. And that was it. That was the narrative set for the next morning. The breakfast shows ran with Labour victories. And so that's why what happens here in Blackpool South, and crucially, the time that it happens, really, really matters. We'll get a result here in the early hours of the morning at a time that will set the political narrative in the UK tomorrow.
Well, we came here to start this campaign to win, and we're still in that frame of mind, although, to be honest, we are also realists, and we've seen some of the figures coming in that, are going to make this evening incredibly difficult to make that a win, and we understand that. But at the moment, we're still buoyant, we're hoping for a win.
It is absolutely fair to say that the Labour trays in front of the counters here are bulging. It has, I think it's fair to say at this point, from what we've got so far, been a very, very good night for Labour, in line with their expectations. They wanted and frankly expected, and actually, even more frankly, needed a very good night in Blackpool South, and it feels as though they are having it. Lots of speculation still about that second place subplot between Reform and the Tories. Reform still feeling quite confident that they've squeaked it, and the Tories not feeling confident that they haven't, if that makes sense. Although I would caution that we're still at that stage of the night, really, where a lot of this is kind of vibes, and we're just starting to see the first trickle, really, of actual votes.
Blackpool, since I've been here, is not the place it used to be, and that's what all the locals tell me as well. Some places it's run down a bit. It's all right, but it's run down a bit. But it needs rejuvenating, back to the fun place that it used to be. And I would suggest that Blackpool sell Blackpool to Disneyland. So and let Walt Disney and Disneyland make Blackpool famous again for what it should be. Everything's here, but it needs to be rejuvenated.
A good night for Labour tonight, by all accounts. How good a night are we talking?
I think it's going to be a very good night for Labour. I think we're confident that Chris Webb will be the next MP for Blackpool South, but until the votes are counted, we can't say for sure.
And then, of course, it all comes down to swing. That's going to be the key indicator as to whether or not you really are on course for a general election victory and what that might look like. Of course, we don't have those stats at the moment, but no. What would an acceptable swing be for you?
Well, we'd need 12% to form a majority if it were a general election. I think we're going to see a bigger number than that.
We believe in a sort of strong reform result here today would be a fantastic result for us here in Blackpool South. Well, I think Nigel knows what he's doing, and I trust in what Nigel does. So whether it's now or later, it'd be great to see Nigel come back to the party. But at the moment, we've got a leader called Richard Tice, who we're all absolutely amazed with.
What I can tell you is that Richard Tice is here. He's arrived, and Richard Tice, I mean, we were in Rochdale a couple of weeks ago when Richard Tice arrived. It wasn't as good a night for Reform UK as they were hoping in Rochdale. George Galloway, of course, getting all the headlines for that. But when a party leader comes, it's a statement. He's coming here tonight because he thinks that they have beaten the Conservative Party.
Of course, no surprise, Labour have won this, but actually it's very, very close between second and third. It's too close to call. Look, I'm an optimist. I hope that Reform UK will just pip the Conservatives. But what I do know is this is going to be our best by-election result in percentage by some margin, and also significantly we're going to be well above our national polling average, which will put paid to some of the naysayers who say we can't do that. So as I say, I think that this is going to be a very good night. And what's also becoming clear actually is that Reform UK is rapidly becoming the real opposition to the Labour Party in the north. The mayoral results are going to be very interesting, but we're optimistic about those relative to the Conservative Party. And what's clear is essentially, we're the new party that's making progress. We're going up in the polls, and as more and more people hear about us, they like what they hear, they like the common sense policies, and the Conservatives are sinking in the polls.
Webb, Christopher Paul, commonly known as Chris, Labour Party, 10,825.
There's the obvious accusation, isn't there, Chris, that you will come up against, which is that this was a vote in frustration at the government and not enthusiasm for Labour.
I disagree with that. People were enthused about Labour, they're enthused about Keir Starmer and the future Labour government. We engaged on the issues, we gave our policies, people resonated with them, and that's why they came out, and we got a record win tonight.
And you say Keir Starmer, people were enthused for Keir Starmer?
Yes, definitely, they want change.
We don't hear a lot of that.
Yes, definitely. Keir's been a friend to Blackpool. He's been here several times. He's listened to the concerns. He's been down the high streets that have been forgotten about by this government. He's listened to young people, and I know he'll do great things for Blackpool when he's the next Prime Minister.
And so, the end of a very long night here in Blackpool South, and a thumping victory for the Labour Party. For that man there, Chris Webb, he is the new Labour MP for Blackpool South, with a swing of 26% to Labour. That is, by any standard, the kind of result that Labour more than need if they are going to form the next government. It has also been, by any standard, a bruising night for the Conservative Party. Very nearly beaten into third place. They weren't particularly pleased to be fighting for second. They'll be just about pleased that they managed it. Just over 100 votes between the Conservative Party and Reform UK. They were bullish tonight. They felt that they could muscle the Conservatives into third. They didn't achieve that. And actually their share of the vote was okay. It was kind of where they would need to be. It was quite telling, I thought, that just as the result was declared, Richard Tice, the leader of Reform UK, immediately made for the back exit. They're not in the mood to celebrate this result, nor, of course, are the Tories, but that man over there, Chris Webb, most certainly is. It is, I think, psychologically important for the Conservative Party that they didn't come third, but it leaves really, really searching questions. What has gone wrong? How has a seat so critical to Boris Johnson and his victory in 2019, such a rich opportunity for them in that last election, escaped their grip to the tune of a swing of 26%? Big searching questions for the Tory party, celebrations for Labour, sleep, I think, for the rest of us.